Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Beyonce. I'm with NAMI New Jersey's Act Now program. If you haven't heard of Act Now is the African American Community Together Now program. And we're hosting a webinar today called The Church, the Culture, and the Couch, a Holy Collaboration, which will be presented by Chanel McCord, who's going to introduce herself in just a few minutes. Just so everybody knows, this is a conversation that explores how therapy and faith can work together to support mental health in Black communities. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to use the chat feature or the Q&A box, and we will get to them after her presentation. Chanel, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Good morning. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I was about to say good morning, but it is the afternoon. I am super excited to be here with you all today in order to have this very, very important conversation, because it is a conversation that needs to be had. About what's going on in our communities. And so I want to start by thanking Act Now for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. For hosting this, because there aren't a lot of talks and conversations about how the faith community, on how the church, or how the Christian community can enter the conversation of mental health. There are a lot of thoughts about how this should happen, about how it does happen, but there aren't a lot of real conversations, especially with reputable organizations where we can have these conversations. So I am so delighted that I get to. Because it really is a get to, and it really is a privilege to be able to be before you all this morning, to be the one to have the conversation. I'll talk about me in a second. I'll talk about me and a little bit about what I do. But this is what I love to do. And so sit back, take notes. We will have a time of Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have any specific questions, please, please, please make sure that you make your questions known and let's have a conversation together. And so today we'll be talking about the church, the culture, and the couch, and how it can be a holy collaboration. And so a little bit about me. There we go. Slides advancing. Okay. So I am a speaker, conference host, workshop facilitator, and the author of two books. And I am a anthologist in another book. So mental health is what I do. I am an advisory member of the NAMI New Jersey Act Now program. So I'm super excited to be able to help to affect change, especially in the Black community, by working with NAMI New Jersey Act Now. I'm a licensed professional counselor in New Jersey. I'm also an approved clinical supervisor, so I help other counselors to get their licenses. I'm a certified clinical trauma professional, current PhD candidate in counselor education and supervision. So if you will allow me 1 second, I am going to celebrate and I'm going to thank the Lord because I am up for graduation this coming May 2026, provided I finish this dissertation, in which case I will finish this dissertation. Somebody drop that in the chat. You're going to do it, girl. I need some encouragement today. Just tell me I could do this. Just tell me I could do this because it's a rough journey. I'm also an ordained elder under the leadership of Bishop Doreen and Joy Morgan from Restoration Station Christian Fellowship, where we're currently in Burlington County, New Jersey. So I'm super excited. I've been in the mental health field for 14 plus years. 7 years in private practice, 5 years in group practice. So I say all of this and I like to present this information because I think it's important to understand when somebody is presenting to you, I'm not just coming to you from opinion, I'm coming to you from lived experience, I'm coming to you from professional experience. Like this is the work that I do as an ordained elder in the church and as a licensed professional counselor and as a clinical supervisor. This is my life's work. And my favorite conversation of them all is to be able to talk about how the church and how mental health can come together and there can be an integration. And so I'm super excited about that. So today, some themes we're going to talk about is how faith and mental health are friends and not foes. Oftentimes, when we talk about faith and mental health, there is this thought and there's this idea that it is two very opposing things, when the truth of the matter is they are not opposing entities. Faith and mental health can actually be friends and they work together. And as an ordained elder, one of the things that I do, because I am a mental health professional, is I often go through the Bible to find themes of mental health. And let me tell you something, there are themes upon themes of mental health biblically that we need to take note of, and how we can understand biblically how it's handled, and then clinically how we can handle it. We're also going to talk about it from a cultural context, right? Talking about the collective trauma and strength, and how the church has served in that role, how the church has served in the role in the past and currently, therapy as sacred work. So for me, I'm that mental health professional because I provide Christian spirituality integration into the work that I do. One of the things I talk about all the time, this is ministry for me. This is not just a profession, but this is ministry for me. This is sacred work for me. Me having an opportunity to get into people's lives in such an intimate way, this is sacred work. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about integration and what does integration look like, right? It's not just taking a Bible and throwing the Bible at somebody and say, pray about it, but there is a way to healthily, to consciously, right, and to appropriately integrate faith factors into how we handle mental health. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about communal healing and collective support. If anyone knows, in the Black community, we are a people of community, right? We have the family reunions. We love the barbecues, the game nights at the house, right? We heal in community. So we want to talk about how the church plays a role in that, and how it can be collective support. And then finally, we just move this out my way. And then finally, we'll be troubleshooting the disconnect. We'll be talking about what has been the disconnect in our communities that has made it so difficult for us to be able to make it that far. Okay. And so, disclaimer, if you see me looking off to the side, it is because I'm looking at my notes, y'all. So don't judge me. Just know I got notes because I want to make sure that we are able to enter this space and into this work together. So the faith and myth of mental health, right? The myth is you just need more faith. That's it. Has anybody ever heard that? If you ever heard that, just drop a one in the chat. Drop a one in the chat if you ever heard, oh, you just have to have more faith and you'll be fine. Your mental health will be fine. Just go ahead, drop that one. Don't leave me out there because I know yep, all these ones I'm seeing, exactly. So oftentimes when it comes to our faith, we are told, oh, if you just have more faith, you'll be fine, right? If you just believe, you'll be okay. Just trust God, just lean into God. And we're being told all of these things, when truth of the matter is the Bible tells us that faith without works is dead. The Bible says faith without works is dead. So what does that mean? Have the faith and believe and have hope that it can happen, but also be willing to put the work in. You can believe for something all you want, but if you believe for it and you do nothing to make it happen, we have a major disconnect and we have a major problem, right? It's like we hear this saying all the time, you can just because you're sitting in a garage doesn't mean that you're a car all of a sudden. No, you have to identify yourself, identify your problems, and you have to be willing to put in the work. So the one myth that I want to bust right now for the faith community, that when we are talking about faith and mental health, it's not enough just to have faith. Why? Let's talk about this from a different perspective. If a person walks into a doctor's office and they have a diagnosis of cancer, are we going to tell them just to have faith? Or are we going to tell them to get the doctor's checkup? Are we going to tell them to go get the assessment? Are we going to tell them to take the medication and do everything that they can to heal their bodies in order to have faith? What are we going to say to them? Go ahead, drop it in the chat. Let me know. What are we going to say to that person? 9 times out of 10, we're not going to tell that cancer patient just to have faith. And if you just have faith and trust in God, that's all that you need. Here's the thing, I believe that God works miracles and miraculous things happen. But when it comes to medical care, we will lean in, we will trust in the doctors, the medical doctors will take the medicine and different things like that because it has to do with our physical bodies, and we'll still pray about it. Well, guess what, y'all? Your mind works exactly the same. There is no difference because now we're talking about the mind, right? Just the same way you would go to the doctor and do the assessment if you're sick, and you'll still trust God to pray. And for the faith community, for the church, we have to understand that we have to help build people up in faith and then tell them to go clock that appointment with their therapist, okay? And so the truth is, you can believe in God and still have a therapist, just like you can still believe in God and still have a doctor, just like you can still believe in God for his provision and still go get a job so you can have some money in your household, right? There's nothing that says that you can't believe in God and tap into the natural resources that the Lord has given us in order for us to help ourselves. And so it is with our faith, right? You can still believe in God and still need a therapist, and there's nothing wrong with it. If anything, it makes you more of a spiritually mature believer because you're being intentional about taking care of you, right? Mental health, oh my goodness. Listen to me. I'm about to shout this one from the mountaintop. Mental health is not a spiritual failure. Wherever you are right now, I need you to shout that out right now. I need you to scream from the top of your lungs. Mental health concerns are not a spiritual failure. I need you to drop it in the chat if you shouted it out. Come on, y'all. If you said it, if you affirmed it, some of y'all might be at work, so you ain't shouted. Maybe you said it in your head. Drop a one in the chat so I know that you're with me. Drop a one in the chat so I know that you're with me. Mental health is not a spiritual failure. This is important for us to understand. A lot of what we understood in the Bible and the Bible stories that we see, and they talk about demon possession or different things like that, we have come to know in the field throughout the days. A lot of that had to do with mental health concerns, right? In those days, it was seen as demon possession, right? I don't have time to get into the basis of all of that because that takes a lot of deep study. But because a person has a mental health concern, does not mean that that person is spiritually abstinent, does not mean that that person does not believe. It does not mean that their faith is that they have failed in their faith. It does not mean any of that. Hear me and hear me strongly. It means none of that. It simply means that I have some work to do because faith community, I'm talking to y'all right now. We are spiritual beings having a natural experience, right? We are still human. I'm still in this human body. I'm still in this human flesh. So, therefore, I am going to be touched and plagued with the different things that come along. If I get sick, does that mean that I'm not a good human? Then if I have mental health concerns, it should also not mean that I am plagued, right, with a spiritual failure. It doesn't mean that at all. We are still human. And so part of when we're learning how to integrate faith and mental health, part of that is learning and understanding that having a mental health concern is not a spiritual failure. It is just another one of those facts of life that we have to work through, right? And this is important to make this distinction because if we're not careful, we perpetuate stigma in the church, right? And what we do is we teach people to spiritually bypass. Who knows what I mean when I say spiritual bypassing? I want somebody to try and drop it in the chat for me really quickly. What does it mean to spiritual bypass? What does that mean? I'm going to wait to see if I get any answers while I take a sip of my water. What does spiritual bypassing mean? Right. Spiritual bypassing is when people of faith utilize their faith as a way to mask them doing the work that they have to do. So when I spiritual bypass, I do stuff like, oh, I'm just gonna pray about it. I'm just gonna trust God. It's in God's hands. If God don't do it, then it just won't be done. No, we just said that faith without works is dead. And so a lot of times what happens in the church sometimes is spiritual bypassing happens, whereas we just faith, pray, 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 but we don't do our part in order to change the situation. I don't care how much you pray. If that doctor says you have high blood pressure, you better stop eating the fried chicken and you better take your high blood pressure medicine. Don't just say, I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to pray about it. And then hope that things are going to change. There are some things that you have to do. There's some things that you have to confront. There's some things that you have to approach in order to see a change. So we don't want to frame mental health concerns as a spiritual failure, because then we'll cause people to begin to mask their concerns. And now we have a whole generation of people who spiritually bypass, which we already have a major problem with that now. Okay. So faith and therapy equals healing. Faith and therapy equals healing. It does not have to be one or the other, right? Our faith supports the spirit. Our faith supports the spirit. Therapy supports the mind and soul. Healing happens best when we honor both. I want y'all to read that for a second. Faith supports the spirit. Therapy supports the mind and soul. Healing happens best when we honor both. Truth of the matter is, I should have said faith supports the spirit and the soul. Therapy supports the mind and the soul, because those things are real. When we learn to combine the church and the couch, framing it according to what we titled this workshop, when we learn to combine the church and the couch, what happens is we have a fuller picture of healing. Just like we sat down and we said, you don't want a spiritual bypass, and you don't want to just pray about it. You want to make sure that you implement the works that you have to implement in order for healing. But the same on the opposite end too. This is where I talk to my mental health people, right? Therapy supports the mind and the soul, but it's also not the only way. It's also not the only way. I am a major proponent of people of faith, people who go to church and have a church. I am a proponent of meet with the ministers and the pastors and your therapist, because there's two different levels of support that you're getting there. I don't expect the pastors and the ministers to be able to therapize you, as it said, or to provide therapy for you in order to help you to beat trauma, but they can help to fuel your faith. They can help to build your hope. They can help to strengthen you and remind you of how God has you as you do the work on your journey, right? And so we also should not be telling people to just go to therapy. The church can't help them with mental health. That is a lie. That is a full lie, right? The Bible is chock full. The Bible tells us not only is faith without works is dead, but we are renewed by the transforming of our mind. Like, God understands this whole thing of mental health. It is literally built into the Bible. The Bible talks so much about mindset. It talks about changing our mindset. It talks about building our mindsets and all of those things, right? So we have to learn to marry the two and not tell people it is one or the other. It is not either or, it is and. Hear me. It's not either or and. It's not either you're going to go to church and you're going to trust God and you're going to have faith that God can do it, or you just need to go to therapy. It is and we can come together to provide a major community of support. We'll talk about this later on in the slides, but it's important to understand that the church historically has always served as a place of healing, has always served as a place of support. And when we look back to areas like the civil rights movement and different like that, the church wasn't just supporting in the realms of faith. The church was also at the forefront of many social justice movements, right? The church was also at the forefront of community advocacy, right? Back in the day, a lot of times when political campaigns are happening and different things like that, the church would bring people together to congregate so the candidates can come and they can talk to the people of the church or whatever, right? The church is not just, yes, the church is the house of God, and we believe that foundationally, but there's so much more that the church serves within the community. And because we know that the church serves this realm within the community, there is so much space for therapy, for the couch and the church and the culture to work together so that healing can happen in the best way. We honor our spirit by healing it spiritually. We honor that. We honor our mental health by making sure we do what we have to do. So it's never either or, it is in. And when we're part of this faith community, we need to learn how to bring this together so that we provide a different level of support, right? The church needs to get on the same page with this, and the therapeutic community needs to get on the same page with this. This is why conversations like this are so important, so we can talk about how we can do this, right? Rather than just pushing things away. One of the failures we have as people is that we demonize what we don't understand. Come on, somebody. We demonize what we don't understand, and we call wrong what we don't understand. We have to learn how to allow ourselves to get educated. This conversation, different programs like this, and what NAMI Act Now is doing, it is help to bring the conversation so that we can get educated, so that we don't automatically jump off the back and demonize the work that we do. I already told you, I have been a minister since 2014. I just got ordained last year in 2024. And I can't tell you that as a therapist over my 14-year tenure, how many times I've sat in front of people of faith and I've been told that the work that I do is demonic. Now, if you know any of my clients or anything like that, or whatever the case is, nothing about what Chanel does is demonic, baby. Let's put that out there right there. But because we don't understand. We don't understand. I'm not sitting down trying to implant thoughts into people. I'm not sitting down trying to manipulate people's mindsets and brainwashing, but these are the things that are taught. And so when we don't have the correct knowledge, you know how they say, there's a saying my grandmother used to say, I can't think about it right now, but I'll get it later. We cannot automatically assume because something is different that it is demonic or wrong. Do your research. Be willing to have the conversations. Be willing to join with churches and talk to pastors. And here's the thing, everybody believes something different. So hear me. I do understand that. Faith and Christianity means a whole lot of things to a whole lot of people. I won't get into that conversation right now. So I do understand that there are differences and nuances, but I know as a whole and overall, the church has always, as somebody wrote in the chat, the church has always been a cornerstone in the community. And we need to make sure that we continue to strengthen that. And knowing the days and times that we are in, mental illness, excuse me, is at an all-time high, especially since the pandemic. Numbers of depression, anxiety, all of those things rose exponentially. So either we're going to call everybody dynamic. We're going to call everybody I can't speak, y'all. We're going to call everybody demonic and hospitalize everybody, right? For thinking that they're just out of their mind. Or we're going to lean into the reality of what's happening and we are going to help the cause forward, right? So faith and therapy equals full healing. Let us remember and let's work hard in order to honor both. All right. So foundational scriptures on mental health. I just want to throw a couple your way. So you know that I'm not out here just, telling you that, oh, faith, mental health is built into the Bible. I just want to read a couple scriptures to you that shows you that God acknowledges it. Okay. So the first one In Psalms 34:18, it says, "The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart and saves such as have a contrite spirit." God understands that we will experience heart sickness, that we will experience brokenheartedness, and He promises to be near us. It doesn't say that brokenheartedness does not exist. It does not say God shuns those who are brokenhearted. And it says that God is near to it and He acknowledges it. Philippians 4:6-7, it says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." Again, God is acknowledging that anxiety is a thing. As people, we're going to worry, we're going to be anxious, we're going to deal with different depressive levels or whatever the case is. But He is letting us know that we don't have to be anxious because He has us. And I would add to that, and this is not the same scripture, when we go to that, we make our requests made known to God, and then remembering that faith without works is dead. So my faith is making my requests made known to God, but then my works is doing my work. It's going to therapy, it's seeking the resources in order to help me to build myself up, right? Um, and then Romans 12:2. "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable, perfect will of God." God acknowledges there is a renewing of our minds that needs to take place. Everything begins and ends in our mind. When I think a thing, this is something I teach people all the time. When I think, if a certain narrative is fed to me when I'm younger throughout my life, and I think and I dwell on those things, the more I think it, the more it becomes a belief. And once something becomes a belief, I begin to act on it, right? That's why the Bible says to renew our mind. Because if I have stinking thinking, then I'm gonna have stinking beliefs, then I'm gonna have stinking behavior. Come on, somebody. But when I have a renewed mind, I have a renewed heart. Therefore, I have renewed behavior. Come on, are y'all getting this? That's so good. That's so good. Drop a one in the chat if y'all receive that. If y'all hear what it is that I'm saying. When I have stinking thinking, I will have stinking beliefs, and therefore my behavior will be stinking as well. But when I have a renewed mind, I have a renewed heart, and therefore I have renewed behavior. And so that way I'm able to show up in the world differently. God acknowledges these things, okay? And so I just want to give myself a time check. Okay, got a little bit more time. So the role of the church. The church has been a spiritual hub, a safe haven and cultural anchor, and healing ground. Let's talk about it. We talked about this before. We talked about this a little bit before, but let's go into it. Obviously, we know the church is a spiritual hub. This is where people come to get equipped to do the work of God. This is where people come to be built up in their faith. This is where people come to lean onto hope and to find hope, right? This is where people come to figure out what their destiny is. This is where people come in order to figure out what is the meaning of life and why am I here and all of that. So the church serves as a spiritual hub, but it's also a safe haven and cultural anchor. Even in some ways, I don't know if this is still true today. I have to do some research on this, but even in some ways, the church is off limits. So, okay, so not to get political or anything, but we know we have all of this stuff with ICE and all of this stuff or whatever. Churches are considered safe havens, and they cannot go into churches and just pull people out or whatever, right? I forgot there's a terminology for it. If somebody remembers and knows the terminology, please drop it in the chat. But churches serve as safe havens for there and a cultural anchor. Like I said, during civil rights movement, the churches were hubs where people would be brought together, and politicians and those who were leading the civil rights movement, they would speak up, right? They were at the forefront. They were the advocates, right? That's why we have Dr. Martin Luther King. He was a reverend. These are people people who came together and said, yes, the church can be a spiritual hub, not just so people can sit and be filled and go home. Yes, those things are important, but the church can also be equipped to be an answer. Hear me. As a safe haven and a cultural anchor, the church can be an answer to many of the things that are happening in our communities. The church can be an answer, right? There we go. Thank you. A sanctuary. There we go. There we go. I could not think of it to save my life. Right. The church is considered a sanctuary space. So, yes, certain law enforcement, different things like that. They can't just come inside toting guns, ready, to do certain things or whatever the case is, because even that is respected. The church is a safe haven. There, we should be building one another up, right? Community happens in church. One of the most powerful things that happens in church is not just the preach word. We know that we need the preach word, but it's the community that's being built. It's the community of believers that's being built. It's a community of people where we can lean on each other and be a support for one another, right? That we can encourage one another. Because when you renew your mind, when you are transformed, you have a transformed heart, and therefore your behaviors are transformed. You need like-minded people around so that you can walk this thing out with, right? The church is very much God. The Bible is not a political document. It's not at all, right? But the church is very much should have a hand in what's going on in our world so that we can help to be an answer, right? The think of the church as almost the church is not government. I don't want anybody to hear me, but the church is a type of government. And within what it does, it can help to be an answer in a community. So it becomes a safe haven. It becomes a cultural anchor, right? Our culture is often passed down through the church, through the songs that are sung, through the history that is taught, right? And so it becomes a cultural anchor, even for maintaining the Black culture, right? And passing down the history and all of that. And it is healing ground. Listen, if anybody goes to church, you see me on church on Sunday morning, I may be crying, I may be dancing, I may be shouting. It is a place where I can just let the emotion out. It is a place where I can just come as I am. It is a place where I can heal, right? It's a place where I can be authentic, a place where I can be real. And so the role of the church is to maintain those three entities in order to make sure that it is truly a part of this holy collaboration that we're talking about. Where can the church evolve? Okay, so let's talk about this. These are important things for us to hone into. The church, where can we evolve? Normalize help seeking behavior. What does that mean? Everything that we've been talking about. If a parishioner, a congregant comes to you and they're dealing with some deep internal things, yes, sit with them, be a support for them, talk to them, but at the same time, encouraging them to go seek the professional help that they need, right? So that it is coming from a place when we do things like that. That's why I love when I'm able to offer my services, from a mental health standpoint, where I'm able to refer people, because what it does is it shows people that there's no shame in this, that you are human and you're going to go and you need to handle your human stuff, right? And so when we normalize help seeking behavior, we help to tear down stigma. Also, training and empowering leaders. Now, everybody is not going to be a mental health professional, and there's laws and ethics around that. I can't see my parishioners and all of that, whatever the case is, but we can train and empower people. How powerful would it be if church leadership was trained in mental health first aid? Come on, y'all, think about that for a second. How powerful would it be if church leaders were trained in mental health first aid? So as they're meeting with parishioners and as they're congregating together, if they start to notice certain behaviors or different things going on or whatever the case is, now they have the tools, not necessarily to do the work, but they have the tools to guide. They have the tools in order to guide their parishioners on to get the help. Listen, that's an initiative that I'm pushing in my church right now. I am a trained mental health professional, but I'm be talking to pastor like, okay, Bishop, let's get five people on staff. Let's train them in mental health first aid and in youth mental health first aid as well, right? and youth mental health first aid as well. That is so important because the youth are dealing with mental health at crazy numbers that we have not seen in such a long time. The mental health for this generation of youth have gone high. But if we can train and empower leaders, man, that would be so transformational. That would be so transformational for the church and for the mental health community. So now we can work together as a community, right? We can work together. It's almost like a what they call it is almost like we're a line staff. The leader sees the issue, the leader can assess and see some mental health concerns, and then let me pass you on to a therapist. Like, how powerful and transformational would that be, right? We have to do better and make sure if we get more people trained in what's going on, then the church becomes even more powerful and can have a greater hand in being that kind of hub, right? And then blend compassion with education. Listen, y'all. Listen, I believe in compassion. I believe in the Bible, but I believe in education. Okay. I have gone through a lot of education. Hear me and hear me clearly in order to get to where I am, because the education is just as important so that we can be a built up community, right? We got to educate ourselves in the things in mental health. And when I say education, hear me and hear me clearly. And I want y'all to imagine me getting all up in your face. Like, this is where Chanel from the Bronx comes out, okay? I'm getting all up in your face. When I say education, I'm not talking about your Google search. All right, I'm gonna sit back down now, y'all. I'm gonna sit back. I'm getting out of your face now. I'm sitting back. I'm backing down. But please don't think that your Google search equals my 12 plus years of education. What AI has told you about depression and anxiety does not equal the education and the things that mental health professionals go through. We learn how to assess. AI is going to tell you the bare minimum. Google's going to tell you the bare minimum. It's so much more to assessment. Listen, from the boogie down, okay? There is so much more to assessment. Here's the thing. You could give me 5 symptoms of mental health, and I could probably name over 40 different diagnoses that those symptoms apply to. Right? But I am trained to assess. I am trained to hear what the client is not saying. I am trained to see behaviors, right? And so you can't just say, oh, I'm sad sometimes. I don't feel like getting up. I'm anxious and I'm worried. Oh, I must have PTSD. It does not work like that. So get the right kind of education. And we blend that with compassion, and now we become an unstoppable force and a powerhouse. But stop with y'all Google searches and stop dropping stuff into AI and now thinking that you are a mental health professional. I'm sorry, y'all. Can I just sit on my soapbox for 1 second? Can I sit on my soapbox for 1 second, y'all? Because I done did a lot of work and spent a lot of money and working on this doctorate for people to be sitting in front of me trying to tell me as a veteran mental health professional. Listen, I'm all for empowering yourself. All jokes aside, I'm all for empowering yourself. I'm all for the search because when my doctor says something, yes, I'm pulling up Google too. But I'm also smart enough to know that that may give me an inkling of knowledge, but it is not the full knowledge. It is not enough to diagnose myself. It is not enough to make a determination of things. It is not enough for me to then go and, become a doctor because I pulled up on Google what this medicine is for, right? We want to make sure that everybody stays in their position. The church has a role, mental health has a role. Don't cross over the role, right? Because you think that your Google search is education. Okay, I'm done. I'm off. I'm off. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to say it anymore. I'm not going to say it anymore. I promise, right? But when we learn to blend compassion, like I said, this is ministry for me. I have compassion for people and I have the education, it becomes a powerhouse. So imagine how much it would be if churches began to train and empower their leaders in things like mental health first aid, right? So now the church can serve in a greater capacity and have a greater understanding, even when pastors are preaching from the pulpit. So they're not preaching amiss. So we're not telling people things amiss because now I have some understanding and knowledge of mental health, right? And so that's one of the initiatives that we need to push. So The couch is holy too. Come on, somebody. Drop that in the chat. Somebody drop that in the chat for me. The couch is holy too. The couch is holy too, y'all. It is. Right. Therapy is not anti-faith. As a matter of fact, faith helps to bolster. Faith helps to bolster the work that we do in therapy because a lot of times we are dealing with clients who are hopeless and they feel helpless and trying to find meaning in life and all of that. Faith helps to do that. Therapy is not against faith. There is a great way to integrate, right? It's a form of stewardship. We learn as believers, the church teaches all the time to learn to be a good steward over the things that you have. What does that mean? It means that you're not wasteful. It means that you are mindful of the things that you have, right? We learn to be good stewards of our money, so to speak, right? It's a form of stewardship, and that is okay. To allow therapy to be just yet another thing that we lean into in order to help us to steward our life better, right? And here's the thing, therapy isn't just for people who are experiencing severe mental illness, right? Therapy is for the everyday person. A long time ago, when I did one of my first internships in mental health when I was in college, this was a long time ago, I had a supervisor who told me that therapy is for two types of people. She said it's for those who have severe mental illness, but then it's also for those we call the worried well. I love that terminology when she said that. The worried well, what is that? That's you and I. It's the everyday people. Maybe we don't have severe mental illness. Maybe we're not on medication for it. But maybe we just need somebody to talk to. Maybe we just have a decision to make or a choice to make. Maybe our job is just stressing us out a little bit, right? We would fall into the category of the worried well, and it's okay for us to steward that and to lean into it by seeking therapy, right? Your therapist and your pastor can both be a part of your healing team. You are not cheating on your pastor if you get a therapist, okay? I want to free somebody up on that real quick. I promise you are not cheating on your pastor if you get a therapist, and you are not cheating on your therapist if you lean into your pastor. No, we can both be a part of your healing team, right? Everybody plays a role, everybody plays a position. Listen, my pastor, it's so funny because my pastor, and they're amazing at what they do, and they provide spiritual counseling and they provide pastoral counseling. But there are times when my pastor will call me up and she'll be like, listen, I need you to give me some referrals because this is now above my pay grade. Know when it's above your pay grade and you gotta slide that parishioner on to somebody who has a background in mental health. And if they have a background in faith and mental health, that just makes it a little bit better. But I promise you, you're not cheating on your pastor to get a therapist, and you're not cheating on your therapist if you go talk to your pastor. We both work as part of your healing team. In the mental health world, in the clinical world, we call it your multidisciplinary team. Most people have a multidisciplinary team. What does that mean? You may have a therapist, you may have a psychiatrist who does your meds, you may have peer support groups, right? Like you may have a case manager. This is just a multidisciplinary team working towards your care. So we have to learn to look at it that way and to see it that way. All right. So a holy collaboration. How do we collaborate? How do we come together? We start with churches, start with partnering with clinicians, finding faith-based mental health practices and clinicians that you can partner with, right? So you can form a referral network. When something is happening, it's just like, okay, I have these referrals on hand so that you can pass on to parishioners so that they can go ahead and that they can get the help that they need. Start mental health ministries. Not every church is in a position to have some churches have counseling centers or whatever. There's a lot that goes into that, but wellness ministries, right? We have ministries for everything else. Why not a wellness ministry? Why not a wellness ministry, y'all. A wellness ministry would be so bomb and so phenomenal. I'm actually working with my pastors now to start one. And it's not just mental health wellness. Like, we're talking about self-care, we're talking about physical wellness, right? Let's start doing things that are actually serving the people so that they can be healthy and well and go out and preach the gospel to the ends of the earth or whatever the case is. Like, this is our mandate from God, but people have to be well to do that. People have to be in their right frame of mind to do those things. So starting mental health ministries, right? Churches have all kinds of events. Why not lean into Mental Health Awareness Month, right? Or World Mental Health Day. Mental Health Awareness Month is in May. World Mental Health Day is in October. Then we have Minority Mental Health Month, which is in July. Like, there are so many opportunities. Let's have panels, right? Churches have all kinds of events and conferences. Have panels and bring in mental health professionals. I'm in y'all face again. I'm in y'all face again. Bring in mental health professionals to have these conversations, not just other faith leaders, not just other pastors, but bring in mental health professionals who can talk about this stuff from a real clinical place. And again, not just a Google search or not just what sounds good because everybody is saying it, right? Popular knowledge, y'all, isn't always the best knowledge. And oftentimes popular knowledge is what perpetuates stigma. We want to get away from that and we want to be able to normalize these conversations. So we want to make sure that we have professionals in the building that can talk about this, right? And then normalizing a conversation from the pulpit, normalizing having sermon series. Pastors, you have sermon series. Do one that's mental health focused. Do one that let people know it's okay to take care of yourself, right? Like, these are some ways that we can collaborate, partnering with each other, wellness ministries, all of those things in order so that we can make sure that we build a bridge. And I'm checking my time, y'all, so that we can make sure that we're building a bridge. We're building a bridge from the church to mental health to the community, right? Because what happens is now we are touching another part of the Black community. We're touching another part of our community that we can begin to experience collective healing. Okay, so what does integration actually mean? This is something we have to talk about, y'all. Integration, therapists. Let me talk about this for a second. If you are a Christian therapist, right? I'm about to rock the boat a little bit, and I'm probably gonna blow your mind. I do not consider myself a Christian counselor. I do not. I consider myself a clinically licensed therapist who provides Christian spirituality integration into the work that I do. What is the difference? Oftentimes, the community hears Christian counseling and they think that we're going to come in, we're going to open up the Bible, and that's it. That's not what I do. We're going to talk about scripture and all of that, but I also deeply believe in the power of clinical skill and marrying the two together. So, integration looks like learning how to marry the Bible along with clinical skill in order to support a client where they are, not just praying, not just sending a client back to pray about it and to just seek God on it, but we want them to seek God on it. We want them because that's reflection, right? We're talking a lot of the same language, we're just thinking about it differently. We want them to seek God on it, which is them reflecting on their issues, their areas of concerns, or whatever the case is. But then we also want to implement real tools. We want them to have real coping skills. We want to work on a reconstruction of our thoughts and our mindsets, right? We want to work on helping to heal trauma, right? And fears and all of that stuff, right? And so that's where mental health comes in, right? And so it's learning. Integration is marrying. We know when you get married, it's the two become one, right? You begin to speak the same language, you begin to move as one, and that's what we want to do when we integrate mental health and faith. We want them to get married and we want them to speak the same language, we want them to create the same traditions, we want them to serve as one whole as opposed to two different entities, right? And so in order to do this, we have to have respect for client's spiritual identity. Again, I said earlier, Christianity and faith means a whole lot of things to a whole lot of people. We have to know where our clients are and respect them where they are. We have to learn to use evidence-based practices infused with values, right? So all day long, you're going to get this cognitive behavioral therapy. You're going to get this narrative therapy. You're going to get this solution-focused behavioral health therapy. But at the same time, I'm going to look at how it marries along with the church, right? How it marries along with the church, right? And then permission center and collaborative. Don't just rush in there and just throw these things on people, right? Make sure that you have permission to broach it so that people feel comfortable in it. Because some of the healing people have to do is sometimes people have to unlearn things, especially when we're talking about from a space of faith, because so many people were taught a lot of wrong when it came mental health in the church and mental illness in the church, like we said earlier, is considered spiritual failure, right? And so a lot of times what we now have to do is help people to unlearn and help them to feel safe. So we broach it with their permission and then we collaborate about how we're going to include it. I have some clients that ask if we can begin or end sessions in prayer. If that's what they want, we collaborate on that. Then I have some clients who don't want the prayer at all, but they're open to hearing the biblical principles and how it integrates, right? So we have to learn to be permission centered and collaborative at the same time. And this is how we integrate the two. And so, checking my time. Okay, okay. And so, actually, I think we're almost done. Look at me on time, y'all. So anyway, I'm sorry if anybody knows me. I'm gonna hype myself all day long. So, troubleshooting the disconnect, right? How do we troubleshoot the disconnect? Acknowledging past harms must be acknowledged. Past harms must be acknowledged. Past harms in the mental health and past harms in the church. We have to acknowledge these things instead of sweeping these things under the rug, because we'll sweep these things under the rug and we'll try to act like, oh, we're moving forward, or that didn't have nothing to do with me. One of the most healing things for people is when we acknowledge when we have gone wrong. Come on, y'all, let's be honest. That's why apologies are so important. Apologies are so important because it's someone acknowledging, wow, you've been done wrong. You've been taught wrong. You're not the problem. You're not crazy. And so, from the mental health standpoint and from the church standpoint, we have to acknowledge past harms. We have to acknowledge how the church has hurt people, how the church has demonized people, how the church has perpetuated shame and stigma. But then we also have to acknowledge on how the mental health community has failed working with the church, how the mental health community. I literally just started with a recent client, and she told me that she was seeking therapists, and she was telling therapists about what God had been telling her, and almost every therapist tried to put her on medication, telling her that she was hallucinating and having delusions and all of that, because they did not understand. They were not able to lean into faith. Whereas now I'm working with her, I completely understand how God reveals himself to us and all of those things. So no, you're not crazy, and let's do this mental health work, right? So it's not just the church that has done wrong, y'all. The mental health world, we have harmed those who go to church, which has pushed a lot of people back from wanting to seek mental health help, because now my faith is not being honored, so I don't want anything to do with it. So we have to acknowledge, both sides of the aisle has to acknowledge where they've done wrong, right? Therapists, we have to be culturally and spiritually humble. Come on, y'all. Be culturally spirit. We don't know everything about faith. We don't know everything about people's culture. And so we have to enter that space with clients, and we have to make sure we enter that space culturally relevant and humble, spiritually humble. Don't go in thinking you know everything about faith, because the worst thing you can do as a therapist when you're working with a person of faith is try to convert them to your understanding or thought of faith. Now, listen, I know that we all have our personal stuff and we have our belief, and there's only one Bible and all of that. I believe all of that, right? But I will do more harm to people if now I'm throwing all of my stuff onto them, or no, you're wrong, don't think like that, or whatever. There is a way, and you have to be a therapist to know this. There is a way that we broach these topics. There's a way that we do the work in a professional manner. And then faith leaders, we can troubleshoot the disconnect by being trauma informed. Again, getting church leaders trained in mental health first aid and having different mental health trainings and bringing in mental health professionals, having wellness ministries, having panels where mental health professionals, we can have these conversations of faith or whatever the case is, right? This is how the church continues to be a safe haven, a spiritual hub, and a cultural anchor in the community. Okay, so just some cultural considerations. We're going to hit it and then we're going to move on. Cultural considerations. Generational trauma runs deep. We have to understand how generational trauma plays into it. And a lot of times it's also spiritual trauma, right? We're taught to be strong, not still, right? You got to be strong. Keep doing, keep going. These are some things that happens within a culture that we have to make some considerations of as we're dealing with the church, as we're dealing with people in their mental health. But just looking at the Black community in general, there's a lot of generational trauma, and a lot of that generational trauma, yes, guys, it's historical trauma that stems all the way back. We can recount it all the way back to slavery. I don't have time for those conversations. We don't have time for that right now, but it is a conversation that eventually needs to have, and looking at how historical trauma is continuing to affect the Black community today, right? And so that trauma runs deep. Black people have historically always been taught and always been seen to be strong, right? Like be strong and do and achieve or whatever, and not just being able to be and take care of themselves, right? And silence has been our survival, but it cannot be the solution. Hear me, y'all. Silence has been our survival. If we don't talk about it, if we sweep it under the rug, if we act like it hasn't happened, because it has helped us to survive. But silence cannot be our solution. We have to continue to stand up. We have to create spaces like this. We have to have the honest conversations. And in mind-blowing concept, I'm about to present y'all with a mind-blowing concept. We don't always have to agree. We do not always have to agree, or we can still be in community. Just because our opinions are different, just because our perspectives are different, does not mean that we have to tear down the community, or we can never be in fellowship with one another because we don't agree. Listen, me and my husband don't always agree, but that's my boo. I love him. Well, we don't always agree, but just because we don't agree doesn't mean that we have to hate each other and it has to be so much division, right? It's coming together. It's using our voices. It's not being silenced in order to help us to bring forth the solutions in the community, right? There's a lot of things we may not agree on, but I want to say it again. Our disagreement and our differences of opinion does not mean that we still cannot be in fellowship. Okay. And so I'll just run through this real quick. Levels of support and healing. Therapists provide the clinical expertise. Ministers and pastors provide the spiritual formation. Friends and family provide the relational support. Congregants of the church provide the communal connection. This is the levels of support, or the levels of service, as we would say in the clinical world, the levels of service in the clinical world, right? We all play a role in the levels of support, and it's all needed. We need the clinical expertise. We need the spiritual formation. We need the relational support, and we need that communal connection. When we have all levels of support running in tandem, man, we are unstoppable, right? And so this is why it's important for us to make sure that we are leaning into this. Communal healing in the Black communities. We know this, y'all. We heal in community, not isolation. Our village is our medicine, and peer spaces are sacred. There is nothing better. Like after this, later today, I'm getting together with two of my best friends and my pastor. Literally at 2 o'clock, we are going to lunch just to hang out and to have fun. And that space is just medicine. It is healing, right? It is a peer space that is sacred. It helps us to heal in community. And so we want to make sure that we continue to perpetuate that communal healing within the Black community, and how the church can serve as a space for that, right? We need each other. One of the issues that people had with the pandemic is because we were told to isolate. And we found cute ways of saying it, like, oh, we're alone together and all of that or whatever. The reality is people were really isolated, and people took that hard. It took our community away from us, because especially in minority communities, this hit hard, not having our community to lean on, community of support. Sometimes community is the one that's providing food. Let's be real, y'all. Like, let's talk about it. I can't tell you how many times growing up in the Bronx where my mom would have me go knock on Miss Lorraine's door so I could get a cup of sugar or a cup of flour so she can complete dinner, because we didn't have the money to go buy any, right? Like, simple things like that. This is community support. This is how we heal, right? This is why those things are so important and sacred in the Black community. Spiritual coping, helpful ways. Yes, you want to pray, worship, rest, and journal, but you don't want to shame, suppress, over spiritualize. We talked about these things, right? We want to make sure that we have real tools, real coping skills that we're able to lean into. Um, I'm gonna skip this slide. So what can we do now? One, we talked about it. Let's speak up more about mental health. Let's speak up about more about mental health in the church. Let's speak up more about faith in the context of mental health. Having these collaborations, refer. If you know somebody that need help, we all know somebody that need help, and we'll sit around and we'll do stuff and we'll say stuff like, "Yeah, so and so needs some help." Refer them. Help them get the help that they need. We have to stop saying, yeah, so and so, that's just how they is. They've been like that for a long time. Stop pointing out the obvious, and let's start helping people to get the help that they need. Refer someone for help, right? And make sure that you're checking in on yourself, right? It has to start with us. I have the saying that I have and I hold on to. It's healing me so we can heal we. How do we heal communities? We heal communities by making sure we're checking in on ourselves and that we are healing ourselves. Um, Beyonce, I promise I'm almost done. I'm running through it, right? So, mental health ministry models, right? We can have licensed therapists as advisors to serve as advisors on ministries, right? Have peer led support groups, preaching mental health in the pulpit, all stuff that we talked about already. There are ways that we can integrate mental health into ministry and start looking at how can we have a mental health, a wellness ministry model that serves the spiritual aspect, but also serves the healing aspect that many need in the community. Let's have the dialogue, right? What does mental health look like in our faith? These are conversations. Take a screenshot of this, because I want to encourage you to go back to your churches and have these conversations. What does mental health look like in our faith? Have the conversation. Where have we gotten it wrong, right or wrong? Have the conversation. How can we better collaborate? I want to encourage you, take these questions back to your respective ministries, to your churches, and begin to have these dialogues so that we can find a better way forward. It is the same way when it comes to the mental health community. I'm having these conversations with therapists about not demonizing mental health, not automatically wanting to say somebody has psychosis or subscribing to medication because they're saying that they hear from God. That does not mean that they are schizophrenic or anything like that, y'all. There's a place for that, and I'm not saying there's not a place for that, but we have to learn, where have we gotten right, what have we gotten wrong, and how can we better collaborate so that we can serve the community as a whole. Um, we did the scriptures. So again, Romans 12:2 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. 3 John 1:2 tells us, it says, I wish that you would prosper, even as your soul prospers, right? And to be in good health. Like, these things are important to God, y'all. God works through therapists too. Being mindful of our language. Start saying stuff like he's navigating mental health concerns as opposed to saying that he's crazy. Language matters, and language perpetuates stigma. Language perpetuates stigma, or language can break down stigma. People have mental health concerns they're navigating. Stop calling people crazy, because it's saying stuff that people are crazy that's preventing them from wanting to seek the help that they need. Biblical, Jesus rested. Saying no is spiritual, and peace is a priority. Screenshot that. I'm gonna leave that right there. Screenshot it real quick. Come on. Screenshot it. Remind yourself that Jesus rested. Saying no is spiritual, and peace is a priority. These are all biblical foundations, y'all. I don't have time to get into it all. There's so much that I can dig into and doing a word study on scripture, but biblical boundaries were created around our wellness and mental health. It's okay to rest as Christ did. Saying no sometimes is spiritual because it's the best thing for you, and peace is a priority. The Bible tells us as much as possible to live in peace amongst all men. That is the word of God. Encouragement. Know that you matter too. Know that you can't pour from an empty cup, and know that it's okay to be the helper and need help. I'm gonna let that sit there for a second. You can be the helper and need help. I just told y'all I'm an ordained minister. I've been in the mental health world for 14 plus years. I supervise other therapists that are working to get their licensure. I'm also a professor of clinical mental health counseling, and I have my own therapist, and I am on medication for anxiety. And I have no problem telling people that at all, because it's not a point of shame for me. It's a point of self-care for me. It's okay to be the helper and need help too. Just don't be the helper that needs help and doesn't get help. What the young people say, clock it. The young people say, clock that. Don't be the helper that needs help and don't get help, because you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you are no good for anybody if you yourself need help and you're not doing what you have to do for you. In order to be spiritually strong, we have to be emotionally strong. So we want to make sure that we operate in integrity, meet clients where they are spiritually, ask and don't assume about their faith, honor the client's pace, and honor their language. I'm running through this, y'all, because we got to move on to Q&A. Ethical considerations. Make sure that there's informed consent. Stay within your scope of practice. Respect religious diversity and nuance. We talked about that before. Everybody has a place, everybody has a role. Let's make sure that we respect it so that we can serve it in a better way. And then understanding that mental health can be ministry. Advocating is ministry. Jesus advocated. Therapy can be a divine assignment because it's helping people get to the heal place. And there's no healing without honoring the whole person. Listen, we got to talk about the spirit, we got to talk about the mind, and we got to talk about the body. If we only heal our bodies, but our minds and spirits are downtrodden, problem. If we only heal the mind, but our bodies are crashing out and we got all kinds of health problems, problem. We heal the whole person and looking at the person as a whole. So this is just some information. If you guys want to contact me or follow me, I know the last couple of slides I had to run through. This is such a meaty conversation. And to be honest, it could be a full day workshop having this conversation, talking about how we can tear down stigma and different things like that or whatever. And so, but if you have any questions, this is my Instagram. You can find me at Oasis Wellness Group on IG. You can find me at Oasis Wellness Group on Facebook, Chanel McCord on LinkedIn. And then that's my website, my email, and the phone number for my practice. I'm looking forward to connecting and continuing to have the conversation with you all very soon. So, questions. I will stop sharing.
This is where I'm going to come back on. So I'm going to say thank you, Chanel, for the great, great presentation. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to ask a question myself, if you don't mind. So for families or individuals who have had challenging experiences with combining faith and like mental health professional help.
Mhm.
How would you suggest taking the first steps to navigate that?
Say your question one more time.
For folks who have challenges combining
Okay.
professional help with their faith,
Okay.
how would you suggest navigating that? Like, what would be the first steps?
So I think the first step would be to first find a neutral ground, a safe space, a safe avenue, safe person, safe mediator to be able to go and have honest conversation with like conversations like this, right? Because I think what happens is people have trouble integrating because it's always been told you got to keep it separate, keep it separate. No, one thing has nothing to do with the other. And that's why it was important for me to let people know you're not cheating on your pastor if you get a therapist, right? You're not cheating on your therapist if you go talk to your pastor. It's one, you have to come up and figure out if the things that I believe about faith and mental health and integrating the two, are they really truly my thoughts and beliefs, or is it a narrative that has been placed on me? Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we just fall into and we continue the narrative because this is what's been given to me. This is what it, just falls on me, right? And so first we got to sit down and do our own reflection and ask ourselves, do I really believe this? Or is this something that has just been passed down to me that I've kind of just jumped into? So it starts with your own reflection. Once you decide whether I believe this or not, if you decide there is a place for the integration, there is a place for the two to come together, then you start to find safe spaces that are practicing this, right? I'm not telling nobody to leave their church. Hear me? I'm not telling nobody to leave their church. But if you have certain beliefs about something and the church is they have a different level of belief, y'all are unequally yoked. Like, right? Like there's an issue. So you may have to find a ministry that more aligns with where you are. Now, here's what I'm saying. Still biblically based, right? I'm not saying go find something that, just I don't want to believe what the Bible says about that. If we're going to talk about faith, still biblically based, but you may have to find spaces that more align with where you are at that place and at that point in your life.
Right.
And that's why I love that Act Now got a chance to do this and have this conversation, because so much we are entering mental health spaces where we can't bring faith in. And we're told, no clinical standpoint, no faith, but there are so many believers out there. There are so many people that attend churches who need this help, where this conversation needs to be had. And so I always say that the church is an underserved population. It's an
Yes.
underserved population when it comes to mental health. And so we got to make sure that we find spaces that align with those beliefs as well.
Right. And I'm glad we're having the conversation too. Act Now is open and available to do presentations in churches, host support groups, do anything of that nature with congregations and ministries as well, because we do know it's important to the
Mhm,
culture, you know.
mhm.
So we have a question. How do you address suicide in a session with a client that's faith-based and is actively experiencing suicidal ideation?
So when it comes to something as serious as suicide, we won't necessarily start with faith-based, because the goal is to get that person safe. So the first thing we do is we do our assessments, right? There's certain assessments to see where the person is, to see what their severity is, to see if they have intention right now. And honestly, depending on how severe that person is, we won't necessarily have time to have the faith-based conversation, because I'm sending you to crisis. I'm sending you to the hospital so that we can maintain your safety. When it comes to mental health, safety is the first. When it comes to suicide, safety is the first step. Safety is the first step. Let's say the person is just having thoughts, right? They're just having thoughts and they're not necessarily have any intent to really harm themselves or anything like that, right? What we do first, we start with a safety plan. Oftentimes we walk them through, okay, if you're having these thoughts, what can you do? Well, how can we help you in order to help you to maintain safety? Where faith can come into that is seeing how the church can support a person. Usually we'll talk about, okay, coping mechanisms that you can tap into that if you start to feel unsafe, triggers, how do you know when you're feeling unsafe? People that you can reach out to if you're feeling unsafe, right? We can start to include churches in that conversation to make it more faith-based. Maybe the church has a wellness ministry. Maybe it's reaching out to your ministers or your pastor or whatever the case is, because a lot of times too, people don't know where to start with mental health. People don't
Mhm.
know it's becoming, I'm hearing it all the time. Like to me, it's just second nature, but of course it's second nature because I'm a mental health professional. And I'm having conversations with people all the time. I don't even know where to begin to find a therapist or find one. But this is where we talk about training and empowering churches and leaders, right? And they having resources and referrals, because then when people go to churches and stuff, the church can be that first step in the conversation in order to help these people get the help in the conversation that they need, right? So broaching the conversation of faith when it comes to that, it really just depends where the person is. But if the person isn't actively suicidal and I was bringing up a conversation of faith, we would definitely go into meaning of life, purpose, understanding destiny, understanding what the Bible says about, like, we were all created and born for a reason. God could have created anybody, but he created you. Why? Like, those are the conversations that we would go into, and then, do a scripture study on what the Bible says about our purpose, our place, and all of that, right? But all of that, again, that conversation becomes secondary to making sure that the safety of the person is secured.
Right. I did see another question in there about NAMI Act Now in Virginia. You would have to check in with NAMI Virginia about what programs they have available. If you search NAMI Virginia, you should be able to find their website, or you can email the Act Now and I can send you the websites and information there to you as well. Because I'm not sure what states do and don't have Act Now. I'm just focused on New Jersey. Is there any other questions? There are a lot of thank yous, Chanel, for the great presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, and everybody was very responsive when you were asking them to engage as well. Hopefully, you saw all the chats rolling in.
Yeah, I tried to keep up with the chat. I like engagement. I got to know that y'all are out there with me.
Yeah. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes for any questions that you guys would like to type out and ask. If not, please feel free. Oh, how do you, as a therapist or mental health counselor, handle failure?
Personally, or personally, I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't see true failure as failure. I see failure as lessons. Just because I've experienced so much, right? And so I start to see them as lessons in order to improve and strengthen myself. I subscribe by the thought process. You can get a million no's, but all I need is one yes. And so I'm always just looking for the one yes. And so when we talk about failure and such, I just think that it's just a matter of remembering that these are lessons. You should learn from your failure. Now, if you keep failing in the same area and keep making the same mistake, that means that you're not growing, you're not progressing, and then we need to get to the bottom of that, and we need to figure out, okay, what can we do to make that better? But failure can just be a totality of lessons, and every time I get something wrong, I can go ahead and improve that one thing, tweak it, try again. And then if it works this time, but I fell somewhere else, okay, then let me tweak that. Eventually, as you tweak, you will get to your place of success. And so that is my conversation with failure, whether it's with clients or myself, just reminding us that it's just a succession of opportunities to perfect.
Do you have any rituals, either prayers on your own before starting a therapy, for example, that you do before starting therapy with a client?
Yeah, so if it, when I work in office, because I provide in office and I provide, telehealth. In office, I have an essential oil diffuser. I just like the setting atmosphere. It just helps to relax. I like peppermint and tea tree oil specifically, just those tones that help relax. Sometimes I pray throughout my office. I keep low lights. I set an ambiance. Personally, for me, I do pray because as a therapist, we're carrying a lot of people's stuff, right, all the time. And so I want to make sure that my stuff for that day doesn't affect my clients, but I also want to make sure that my client's stuff doesn't weigh so heavy on me that I'm not well as a person. I have to hop out of one session and hop into the next and not bring the trauma of that last client into the next session, right? Like we often don't get breaks in between. It's like you done with one, you move on to the other. So it is, prayer, setting an atmosphere for myself in my office, but then also it is the everyday self-care. Like I'm mindful. For me, I have at least one day a week where I do not work. I just take off. And if I want to lay in the bed all day, trust me, that's what I do. I will lay in the bed all day. I'll see my husband off to work, or I won't. I'll just be laying in the bed as he leaves the house and I'll say sayonara. But I learned for me that my everyday self-care is what's necessary so I can continue to be effective as a counselor. If I am not tapping into my own self-care, if I'm not taking care of myself appropriately, that is problematic and it is actually unethical. It is built into our ethics codes that we are taking care of ourselves, right? And I heard it said once that the therapist who won't seek therapy or who won't do their own work is secretly judging their client. We want clients to come to us for these services, but we're not willing to tap into the same services, then do we really believe in the power of what we do? Right. And so that's the other thing. I am in my own therapy. Like I told you, I'm in my own therapy unapologetically. I stopped for a while. I had a major loss in my family recently. I called my therapist right back up, like, girl, put me on the books, because I got to do my work too. I have an anxiety concern. I've been on anxiety medication for several years. I had to stop lying to myself and think that I'm gonna therapize. I know what to do. I'm human too, and I am better for it. I don't miss my medication doses. I don't. So it's the everyday self-care and taking care of yourself. The same things that we tell our clients, we got to make sure that we're tapping into for ourselves.
Mhm. That was the last question. Again, a lot of thanks for the great presentation. If there's no more questions, everyone is free to go. And I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. This is a recording. It will be posted in the coming days. Um, and yeah, thanks everyone for coming. So,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Beyonce. Thank you for allowing me to do this.
no, thank you
Love this
for doing it.
conversation. Hope you guys have an amazing day. Enjoy the rest of your
Yes, have a
Friday.
great day and have a great weekend, everybody.